Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started in a second. Here, I have told several people the origins of this format, where people read from writing that has meant something valuable to them. And it is an interesting story of its origins. About almost 20 years ago, I guess, there was a man in Boulder who was losing his eyesight, and his eye surgeon told him of a procedure that would either restore his eyesight or end it. It was gradually declining, but that would accelerate the decline if it went the wrong way. The man went ahead, had the surgery, his eyesight was restored. He was exhilarated by being able to read again and to read whenever and whatever he wanted. So he and his surgeon prepared an evening where people read for 5 minutes from works that gave them delight in the fact that their eyes worked and they could see the page. So that's where this format came from, in case anyone's wondering about its origins. We're grateful tonight to Tish and John Windsor for their sponsorship of this program and for this series, Words to Stir the Soul. This is an event that we at the Center of the American West approach with humility and caution, and yet also with a hope that we can be helpful. As a Western American historian, I have long been interested in the history of wildlands fire. I have lectured and written about the long-term consequences of the policy of fire suppression. The Center held a forum on fire management policy in 2001 after a heavy fire season in 2000. The results from that are on our website, Facing Fire, Lessons from the Ashes. I've been a member with less than sterling attendance in the last couple of years of the Front Range Fuel Treatment Partnership Roundtable, dealing with the buildup of flammable biomass in this area. I participated in a forum on fire in the Wildlands Urban Interface in Boise and visited the Boise Interagency Fire Center there. My essay from that workshop, Fire Alarm, Historians to the Rescue, was published in the fall of 2008 in the journal Forest History Today. Rereading that article is not a comfortable experience for me because it is so clearly written by an author who never took a moment to think that a catastrophic fire would take place in an area adjoining her hometown, and who did not take a moment to think that she would know people who would lose their homes. Still, that essay represents my best shot as a historian at drawing lessons for the present and future on the subject of fire. A reference to the essay is in the program, and I will listen receptively to anyone who has comments on it. On the morning of Labor Day 2010, I was in my house working on a writing project and noticing in an almost subliminal sort of way that a mysterious, strangely colored cloud was taking over the sky. When I came to full attention, my husband, my stepchildren, and I went outside and looked at the sky and tried to hope for a quick resolution. As we looked at the smoke and observed the wind, I did not burden my companions with historical reflections. In truth, if I have an area of expertise when it comes to reckoning with the impacts of the Fourmile Canyon Fire, it is derived more from my experience as a widow than my experiences as a Western historian. With my first husband's death from a stroke in February of 2005, I entered an immersion course on the subject of irreversible loss. I know about the way in which your mind becomes unmanageable and keeps delivering up plans and strategies for reversing time and arranging for a different outcome. I know about the way in which you repeat to yourself, "This is the situation I have now, and this is what I must live with," while your unruly mind still works away at getting the reality you cannot bear to relent and to surrender and to disappear. In preparing for this event and in talking to people who had lost their homes, I found my bearings much more from what I know about widowhood than what I know about the role of fire in Western history. I will, however, make this brief statement about the big pattern of history at work in these matters. In the wildlands urban interface, two facts coexist and sometimes collide. First, Western forests are places of great beauty, and thus they are attractive places to live. Second, as ecosystems and landscapes, Western forests are subject to episodic fire. For years and even decades, these two facts can coexist without friction or trouble. But at some point, in many Western places, they will collide, and the collision will produce misery and irreversible loss, and also heroism and determination and dedication to community. And asking for a difficult and strenuous reckoning, there will be a conundrum of what lessons should be learned and what actions should be taken. The Center of the American West uses the slogan, transforming hindsight into foresight. We hope that the event tonight will generate ideas about how we should, or if we should, join others in trying to apply this slogan to the Fourmile Canyon Fire. We are very aware of the fact that many individuals and groups have invested effort and struggle in the cause of figuring out the lessons of the fire, and it would be foolish for us to try to duplicate the efforts of others, or worse, to get in their way. But if you have thoughts about any next steps that we might take, I hope you will speak to me at the reception tonight or contact me in the next few days. The context for this evening is, as I know everyone has been thinking, unexpected and difficult. The start of the fire in Left Hand Canyon last Friday was disturbing, though there is enormous relief in its near containment. The earthquakes and tsunami in Japan confront us with an extraordinary scale of death and irreversible loss, and also a terrible situation of uncountable numbers of people without homes and facing a shortage of food, water, and medical care, and now facing dangers of radiation. Human compassion must respond both to the troubles of people who live near us and to the troubles of people at a distance. Rather than a zero-sum game in which we divide a limited amount of empathy between our neighbors and the Japanese people, we have every good reason to think of our local sorrows and losses as enhancing and affirming our concern for the people of Japan. The emphasis of tonight's event is not the formulation of policy for the future, though that may come up in some presentations. We have asked a range of people who were significantly involved and affected by the fire to read from works that gave them perspective and sometimes encouragement in tough times. In some cases, they will read from their own writing, and in others, they will read from published works that help them reflect on the fire. I'll take a few seconds to explain why they made their choice. In an age when floods of information are constantly bearing down on us, it is easy for attention to waver and for memory to fade. For the people reading tonight, and for many in the room, there has been no wavering of attention and no fading of memory on the subject of the 4 Mile Fire. But for others, other concerns have taken center stage, and the lasting impacts of that fire have moved to the edge of their attention. The largest goal of this evening's program is to bring attention back to the fire and to its long-term meanings. A few days after Labor Day, the prediction was for intense winds starting in the early evening. It was a very precarious situation with the zone of pending evacuations now right in the city. It was a quiet afternoon, and I started to think that maybe the weather predictions were going to turn out to be wrong. And then around 5:30 or 6 o'clock that evening, the wind started up. My neighbor has wind chimes, to which I had never paid an ounce of attention. But that evening, as the winds kicked in, the sound of those wind chimes was the sound of anxiety and distress and intense concern. In the night, when the sound died down, the silence was itself a wonderful thing to hear. But my neighbor's chimes now have an association in my mind that is undiminished. When the wind gets them going, they sound ominous, in a strange way more disturbing than a siren. I remember a time when wind chimes carried no meaning, but I also appreciate the fact that my neighbor's chimes do not let my attention waver, nor do they let my memory of the fire fade. The readers will appear in alphabetical order. I will not interrupt the sequence for individual introductions. You can find very brief biographical information in the program. I am grateful beyond words to the readers for their willingness to appear here, and I'm as grateful for everyone in the room, everyone in the audience for coming to hear them. We reaffirm the commitment held by everyone in the room to talk and think about this difficult subject in a spirit of civility and understanding. And in that spirit, I conclude with a remark about Gilbert White, who taught at CU and who set the highest standards for thinking hard about the hazards of life on this planet and about the complicated relationship between human decisions and natural disasters. Gilbert White was a geographer, a Quaker, the founder of the Hazard Center on this campus, and a world-renowned expert on how humans can make choices that will reduce the chances of their deaths from floods. Near the end of Gilbert's life, whenever I saw him, I was overwhelmed with the recognition that this was a man who had saved more human lives than anyone else I had ever met or ever imagined meeting. I've spent the last couple of weeks wishing that Gilbert White could be here tonight and could provide these opening remarks. The closest I can get to this wish is to tell you what Gilbert told me when I asked about the origins of his commitment to helping humanity. He said that whenever he saw his grandmother, beginning when he was really just a toddler, his grandmother would say to him, "Gilbert, what have you done today to make the world a better place?" It is our hope tonight that Gilbert White and his grandmother would approve of what we do here together. Thank you.
My name is Marisha Evans. I am a freshman at Boulder High School. My family and I lost our house in the Fourmile Fire. This was the house that I was born in and lived in for 15 years. So I wrote this poem to commemorate it. It is titled Home. Home was peacefulness, happiness, patience. Home was the comfort of my mother's arms, the sonorous resonance of my father's voice, the vibrant melodies of my brother's cello as I fell asleep. Home was the familiar smell of home cooking. Home was my mother's baking, roasting, frying, the glorious result of her hard work. Home was my father's fresh greens that filled the stomach of our happiness. Home was the laughter and the family at all the holidays. Home was old traditions shared with new friends, sharing, giving, receiving. Our greatest reward was seeing a thankful face. Home was souvenirs and old family heirlooms, the rows on rows of much-loved books. Home was the first flowers of spring, the sweet smell filling our house, the elderberry bush whose first fruit was taken by the birds,